I remember last year I really wanted him for the Raptors, but he's not really good.
Wayne Ellington would be the best thing for the Raptors. That's all they need is another shooter.
That's 1 year
ago. Jeremy Lin who couldn't shoot at all. That made no sense.
Who didn't play at all. How about that?
Yeah. They tried to play him for the first part, and they were just like, no, this doesn't work.
It's also because Fred VanVleet went into God mode. If VanVleet didn't go into God mode, this team would be very different.
That's true. And now we have Terrence Davis, the new Fred VanVleet.
Now you have a championship, bro.
Yeah.
Well,
Why do you focus on that part?
I will say, though, Davis is very solid player from what I've seen. Like, a very solid player.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah, like, if I'm the Psy, a late first-round draft pick means jack shit to me. Like, it means, like it's not worth it. Like, if anyone's like, I'll trade you a pick for any player, I'll be like, no, it's, like, I can find my own talent.
I feel like Masai's like almost like a mob boss now, where he's like, he brings in, what guy's name, Bobby Webster?
Yeah.
He's like, bring me a globe, spin the globe, and stop it. And I'm going to point my finger at a country, and we're going to find a player from that country, because I'm just that good.
Probably.
Venezuela. All right, let's go there now and find the next Pascal Siakam.
And that is how we're going to start this podcast. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Stretch 4 podcast. I'm your host, Peter Turan, and on the line, I have my pick and pop partner, Josh Cohen. How you doing?
Love NBA trade deadline day. It's one of the better days of the year if you're a basketball fan.
Oh, hell yeah. Banger in the paint, Rajan Walia, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. This is like the 1st of July for me, if you know what I mean.
It's like all the free agents coming out, except you get trades?
Yeah, I think the trades also make it more interesting because there's some teams going for it. Some teams are just trying to like learn how to tank and set up for next year. So lots of action going on, and a lot of these trades that we're talking about happen in the last 24, 48 hours.
Yeah, it's true. We're recording at 2:45 on Thursday, so hopefully something happens within the next 15 minutes. But we should definitely start with the biggest trade. And I mean, like, literally the biggest trade involving 12 players. We haven't seen that since, what was it, like 2000 with Patrick Ewing? Was that the stat I kept seeing everywhere? This is big. You got Robert Covington going to Houston. Also Jordan Bell, who's since been traded. Clint Capela going to Atlanta. Malik Beasley and Juan Hernan Gomez going to Minnesota. And then Denver getting a bunch of guys that they're going to end up trading. The main thing is that Houston is really embracing the small ball lineup. Right, they're gonna try to throw out PJ Tucker at the 5 from now on, especially after trading away Jordan Bell. I mean, that's what it sounds like going forward, right?
Yeah, this is a super risky move because what if PJ Tucker gets injured? Then who do you play at center? Right? They have nobody behind him. I mean, they have Isaiah Hartenstein, who they just refuse to play now, and they just traded Jordan Bell for Bruno Caboclo. And you know, as big of a fan as Bruno as I am, I don't think he can play center against Nikola Jokic or Rudy Gobert in the playoffs.
Yeah, this is a risky move, but I think the logic behind Houston going after this is they don't want to lose the same way they've been losing in the last couple of years, and they've always been one to revolutionize the game. And before, like, the whole 3-ball and like teams shooting such a high volume of threes, Houston was one of the first teams to do it. So they're trying to innovate the game. They're taking a risk, and Tucker better get paid or better earn at least some respect from that team because he's going to be playing those like 35, 40 minutes at center. Oof.
They never gave him an extension when he was extension eligible, which is a big slap in the face. So I think he's going to leave after this year, but that's a whole nother point. But on your point that they're trying not to lose the same way as they did the previous years, I don't think that's the case. I think in getting Westbrook, they sort of did that with that trade, but this trade is more so just them really going all in on small ball because they saw that the Russell Westbrook, Clint Capela experiment with those two guys together on the court wasn't really working, especially when they were double teaming James Harden. Westbrook would get the ball in the middle of the floor, bring it up, and then he'd be, basically 2-on-1 with him and Capela against the big guy. And the big guy was just laying back, avoiding, the alley-oop play. And I think Houston just wants to space it out more to where there's going to be nobody in the middle at that point, and then Russ can either get to the basket or, kick it out for the three-pointer. And ever since Capela's been out, Russell Westbrook's game has really taken off. He's shooting a super high percentage, stopped shooting threes. He's getting to the basket a lot more often because the big guy's just not there anymore.
Yeah, I think also Capela doesn't have a very strong playoff history, and I think last year he was almost unplayable at moments, and we all know he has hands of stone, and he was a good fit in certain respects, especially on the defensive end, and he was a center that could run, and he was very mobile. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if Houston makes one more move. Obviously, they picked up Caboclo, which is a smaller move when they traded Jordan Bell, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make one more trade for a center out of the East in the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes. We might hear something. Wouldn't be surprised if they pick up a player like Christian Wood or Kem Birch. Probably not Wood now that another trade has happened, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go for Kem Birch.
Yeah, because Christian Wood's just too good.
Yeah, why doesn't Tyson Chandler play? Tyson Chandler's over 6'8".
Yeah, if you could turn off injuries, I'm sure he would play.
Yeah, that's fair. That's wild, man. So what kind of closing lineup do you project for this team? You obviously have Russ and Harden. You're just going to run Gordon, Covington, and Tucker out there? Hopefully Tucker can cover big guys, because most of the West has at least one big man.
Yeah, I think the one spot that's up for grabs is either Gordon or Daniel House. So I think Covington's going to be a mainstay because he's probably the best defender out of all those guys. And I think he's going to be shooting a lot more threes, and whether or not they go in is, to be determined, obviously, because he's very hot and cold with his shooting. I mean, last year I think he shot around 49% on open threes. This year he's at around 38% or so, and he's shooting like 33% overall. So he's been a bit colder this year, but maybe now with all the space that Houston's going to have and all the open shots he's going to get, that's going to go up. I mean, that's already happened for look at Ben McLemore. He's turned himself into a player because of all the open threes he's getting. So Covington's going to get those same open looks, and they do have a lot of wing depth in terms of how they play. I mean, as long as you can shoot on Houston, you're going to get minutes.
I think there's still one, I'm not even saying a big player. I think they need one more rotational piece, and obviously Caboclo will probably end up playing some minutes, maybe in the regular season, probably not in the playoffs. But I think they are going to look for a center, someone who can just rebound, set some screens, who's very, very good without the ball. And those players are not impossible to find, and they only need that player for 10 or 15 minutes a game max. But yeah, I think Covington is a very overrated player. I think he's the other big piece in this trade. I kind of look at him as kind of like a Danny Green. Honestly, maybe obviously a more mobile Danny Green, but he has the injury concerns. But I don't think he's a much better player than Danny Green.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison because both those guys are hot and cold. I mean, Danny Green was extremely cold in the playoffs last year, but there were certain games where he just shoot 5 or 7 from 3. They're both inconsistent players, but I think Covington's a great fit on this Houston team. He is overrated just in terms of everyone talking about him as if he was the best player available, which, in terms of how the media was talking about it, he probably was one of the better players available. But he's going to fit perfectly on this Houston team as long as he's able to shoot a pretty high percentage, which again, he's shown in the past. So, looking at the other side of things though, with Atlanta, I think that they made a really nice trade here and getting Capela. I mean, I think he's on a 3-year contract now, right? He's only got 3 years left in his contract, and he's had a pretty good number as well. And he's going to fit perfectly with Trae Young, and being able to roll the basket and give, Trae Young a lot more space. And he's going to be a nice fit next to Collins as well. They can still play small with Collins when Capela goes out of the game. They just have a lot of options in Atlanta, and they also traded for Dedmon, which I'm sure we're going to go into that as well. But I like the way this Atlanta's team is being built. And even though they're a really bad team right now, which is fine, I think in the next 2 years, you're going to see them, slowly creep up to that 8 seed, at least.
I mean, what Atlanta really needs is just for their perimeter to get a little bit more defensive, right? Who do they have at the 3 right now? Or who runs the most minutes at the 3?
DeAndre Hunter. And he's supposed to be that guy, which, again, is going to take some time. But he's shown flashes this year.
Yeah, so do you think Capela and Collins work together? Because Collins, in recent years, has tried to extend his range a bit, but he's still not, a consistent shooter from the perimeter.
He's been good, though, overall, in 3-point land.
Having watched a few Atlanta games because Collins is on my fantasy team, I think he's best suited as a rim runner, when he's attacking the rim. a lot like Amari was back in his son's days. Obviously, he's not the player that Amari was, but I think he's better going downhill, and I feel that having Capela there, who doesn't offer as much floor spacing, will result in a bit of traffic there. It all depends on how they stagger the minutes and how much that three is, because obviously their core is very young with Young, Herder, Capela's relatively young. And then obviously Collins is young. So like if they play Hunter and Hunter is able to shoot the three, they'll be okay. But I don't know if the fit's actually perfect because Capela has no range.
You know what I just thought of? Remember how during the summer we were saying how Atlanta took on a bunch of contracts that were obviously like overpaid for guys like Evan Turner, Chandler Parsons, and Alan Crabb? All gone.
Yeah, they managed that well. Obviously, Parsons had the accident, but yeah, those contracts, they ended up getting good return. And I think the nice thing with Atlanta is they have a plan, unlike some teams, Detroit, yeah, exactly. And like they have a plan. They have a bunch of young guys now, players that even if they're losing, they're going to get invaluable experience. And I think in 2 years, that's when you can fairly judge if this team has improved. I think the rest of this year and most of next year, you're hoping to see strides. But in 2 years, the season of 2021 is where you'll be able to really start making judgments on how good this team is. But they're exciting. I think they'll be one of the more exciting teams in the NBA.
The smart general managers and basketball ops guys in the past few years that are on rebuilding teams have realized when you're going to be bad, you should take on these long-term deals, maybe, guys with 1 or 2 years left in their contract where the team is trying to get out of the money or out of the luxury tax, or they have to include a first-round pick, and they take these guys on for a year or two like they did with Crabb and Parsons, and then they turn those first-round picks into something afterwards, or, they keep them because they're still young and they can see what these players become, right? Guys like DeAndre Hunter and Cam Reddish, and they still have a bunch of picks coming as well. So, teams like New York that just decide to go the complete opposite route and, pick up all these veteran players that they hope to trade later on. I mean, we talked about this in the summer where they picked up guys like Wayne Ellington and, Julius Randle, who's a good player, but, Marcus Morris, obviously, who just got traded. Most of those guys are not going to be moved for first round picks. I mean, in this case, Marcus Morris ended up getting a first round pick for them. But the other guys that they picked up who they were hoping to get picks for come the trade deadline, they're just going to stay on the roster, right? It's pretty unlikely all those guys are going to get traded by 3 o'clock today. So it just seemed like a waste.
All right, since we keep talking about him, we should really talk about this trade that just went down. Marcus Morris is officially an LA Clipper with your boy Josh, Isaiah Thomas. They pulled off a 3-team trade, obviously, and we're looking at Jerome Robinson going to the Wizards and Mo Harkless going to the Knicks with a 2020 first-round pick. The Clippers just got stronger, like a lot stronger. Probably the main contender right now.
Yeah, I think this solidified 2 of their big positions of need. Obviously, Isaiah Thomas is probably not going to be a key piece for them going forward, but he does add that extra playmaker and extra ball handler. And then the big fish is Marcus Morris, who the Clippers were interested in the offseason. We all heard the reports about that. I think for most teams, right after Iguodala, I think Marcus Morris was the piece that would push any team that was a very good contender above the rim. And I think the Clippers are by far the favorites now. Just looking at their lineup, their scoring, their experience. I really struggle to see how the Lakers could make a move in the next couple of minutes that would even put them on par with the Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that the Lakers took Kuzma off the table, according to reports, in order to receive Marcus Morris seems, I don't know, I don't really understand that move because, LeBron's obviously in his last few years of his career. He's still obviously amazing, but I think in this time frame, you have to try to go for it. And I think that was the deal that you really had to make because Marcus Morris would have made them a lot better too. And he's one of the better catch and shoot players in the NBA. And that's exactly the type of player that they needed, especially coming off the bench. And I think he's going to start for the Clippers. I mean, Maurice Harkless has been starting for them for, pretty much every game that he's played where he's been healthy. And, Marcus Morris isn't quite the defensive player that Mo Harkless is, but he's going to add a lot of shooting and he's going to make them a lot more dangerous overall. And defensively, he can guard 2 through 4. So just another player that you can just put in the lineup. and not really have to, double team as often or help off as often with him being, as physical and as tough a defender as he is.
And I just like the fit.
This doesn't really solve their issues down low though, right? Because if you have, let's say you compare them to the Lakers because they're the obvious example here. If you're going to put AD against Ivica Zubac or Montrezl Harrell, I'm taking AD all day, right? Like there's still a major gap that they have in the front court.
No, but if you look at the 2 games where they played the Lakers, I mean, Davis had a really good second game, but the first game, they just kept bringing over a multitude of different defenders from different angles, and Davis wasn't able to adjust. I think that's going to be the play come playoff time. You're going to see a guy like, Kawhi or Marcus Morris on Anthony Davis, and they're just going to blitz Davis. And unless he really just, hurts them on the offensive glass and he's able to, get inside on like quick duck-ins, if the Lakers rush the ball off the court, then I think in the half court, the Clippers can still slow them down, which they've done in the first 2 games. I don't think the size matters as much as people say it does, especially in today's NBA where you can just help off from any angle. If this was like 2001, then you might worry before the zone defense was implemented, but as of right now, since you're able to double team and triple team from different angles and front the post, I don't really think it's that much of a, I don't know. I don't really think it's that much of a thing.
Can you really use that first game as an example though? When this is his first time playing with that team, and like, granted it's the Clippers' first time being together as well, but I don't know. I still think it's a big deal that the Lakers are so much bigger and their defense is going to really swarm LA when they come inside. So the Clippers when they come inside. So what would the Clippers do on offense then? You're going to be trapped the whole way.
Yeah, but I think the fact that the Clippers have Marcus Morris, who's like you mentioned, one of the better catch and shoot players, and his game is not limited to playing inside. I think they're going to have enough options with like Shamet being an out perimeter player, Morris, Kawhi and PG both have like good range. And obviously inside you might not be able to get as many baskets, but I actually, kind of going back to what Josh said, I think the fact that the Clippers have enough bodies to throw at AD, so even if one player does get in foul trouble, they do have a JaMychal Green off the bench who's just a body, who's not going to be there to shut him down, but just to slow him down enough. And the one thing with the Lakers is, besides LeBron, no one can really take any of the Clippers players off the dribble.
And even LeBron in those 2 games really struggled against all the guys that he was going up towards. He didn't really look great going against Kawhi and Paul George, especially in the second game. Davis had a much better second game than he did first, but overall, like, LeBron doesn't have that burst that he did even 2 years ago. He's still obviously incredible, but he's not a guy that's going to be able to get past, Paul George and Kawhi on his own. Like, he's more of a pick and roll guy now, especially against like elite level defenders anyway.
Yeah, so I think the Lakers' biggest issue going against the Clippers is they don't really have that guy that can get to the rim consistently. Obviously LeBron can, but if you put like Paul George or Kawhi or one of your elite defenders on LeBron, I think that's a bit neutralized, but they don't have that other player that if Anthony gets doubled, that reasonably can shoot the 3 or take someone off the dribble. And that's really where the Lakers ran into trouble, and I think that's where they wanted to add a bit of depth, a ball handler or someone who's a bit more shooting, a bit more consistent shooting, but they didn't either, and I think the Clippers obviously got stronger, and they didn't give up much. They gave up Mo Harkless in their first-round draft pick, and they're in a win-now mode, especially with Paul George's contract and Kawhi's contract. They want to win now, and they gave up really Harkless.
Are you guys forgetting about playoff Rondo here?
I have forgotten about playoff Rondo.
The disrespect, man. Come on. I don't know. I think Kuzma's getting a lot better as the year goes on. So we'll see in the playoffs. That's all I can really say. Because it's obvious that they're just going to try to trap Davis as much as possible and throw like all the length they can at him. But it's really up to the perimeter guys to hit their shots.
Before we move on, I think we also have to give credit to the Knicks for once. They actually made a deal that makes sense. They didn't keep Marcus Morris and try to extend him like they were talking about 2 days ago. So good for them.
It's because they got a new GM or president of basketball ops. Yeah, it's going to be a power front, man. Front office? Yeah, powerful front office.
Yeah, I mean, Leon Rose is super connected around the league, and obviously Worldwide West, there's a ton of stories about him throughout time where he's like basically a power broker for the NBA. So they obviously have a lot of connections, and, if they do it right, maybe eventually we'll be seeing playoff basketball in New York in 5 years.
The Mecca. All right, next trade. We have Andre Iguodala 2, the Miami Heat, along with Jay Crowder and Solomon Hill. 4, former first-round pick Justice Winslow, James Johnson, who has since been traded, and Mr. Gummies, Dion Waiters. Miami just came out with an amazing haul in this, right? Like, there's no way we can say Miami did not win this trade.
I think teams won the trade.
I'm going to argue with you, but I'll let you have your minute.
So I really like what Memphis did here. I mean, obviously in getting Dion Waiters and James Johnson, who has now turned into Gorgui Dieng, they essentially traded a player who wasn't going to be playing for them for a player who, you know, when he does play, Justice Winslow is a really good player. And he showed that in the playoffs a couple times now. And they basically got him for free because, again, going back to what I was talking about before with the GMs trying to trade for, you know, longer term contracts in order to receive either first round picks or good young players. These contracts don't really matter, and they can use them again in a trade later on, which they've already done today in trading for Gorgui Dieng and solidifying their backup center position. So I do like the move in getting Winslow, and they just keep adding to their wing depth overall. I mean, they already have Brandon Clark and Jaren Jackson Jr. They just have a lot of guys that A, know how to play, and B, are super long and rangy on defense. I can guard even 1 through 5. These guys can guard point guards on switches, which is huge. And I really like the way that Memphis is building their team.
Yeah, looking at the trade just before I found out the details about James Johnson being swapped for Dieng, but just the way both teams made the trade, I think Memphis was actually in a position of power, and I really don't know why they picked up the extra contracts in terms of James Johnson and Dion Waiters. Both of those players combined are set to make $28 million over the next year, whereas they gave away Crowder, who's expiring, I believe, next year, and who's on a very friendly $8 million, and Solomon Hill, who has a very bad contract. I don't know. I think if they were able to do Iguodala for Winslow, I think that made a lot more sense for them. I don't know why they picked up Waiters. I don't know how he fits into their plans. But swapping out James Johnson for Dieng makes me feel that Memphis actually has gotten a lot better. They just added good players, like good, solid players. I think in terms of, if you look at their roster depth now, 1 through 8, 1 through 9, they have NBA caliber players. They're going to be a well-balanced team, and I think they're going to have assets going forward. Like, if a player does become available, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to look for a player like Winslow if he can stay healthy, potentially Dion Waiters if he's able to actually play consistently.
Wait, why do you think that Memphis was in the power position in the negotiation?
Because I think Iguodala was a piece that Miami clearly wanted in terms of them actually being able to sign, like wanting to sign him for an extra 2 years, or obviously 1 year plus the 1 year team option. So clearly he was a player that Miami wanted. And obviously Memphis is looking to get some kind of assets, and Justice Winslow is a great asset for Iguodala. I just think that they really didn't need to give up Crowder to do that, because if they just waited there and said, like, you either get Iguodala or you don't, then I think Miami would have been.
We have no idea what the negotiations were, but clearly those guys had to be part of the deal in order for the deal to go through. Like, clearly Miami wanted Jay Crowder, right? And in order to get Jay Crowder, Memphis probably told them, like, all right, you have to take Solomon Hill too, and you got to trade salary for salary, right? So you're getting 1 more year of Dion Waiters and, you know, James Johnson, which is now Gorgui Dieng, but it doesn't really factor into anything Memphis is doing. So why would you not do that in order to get a good young player like Winslow?
No, I get that, but I feel the fact that Iguodala is one of the pieces that was coveted around the league in terms of the Lakers, the Clippers, Miami. There's a few teams that were interested in him, teams that were serious contenders for this year. And then the fact that they were willing to re-sign him, like, that must have came up in the negotiations that, like, hey, if we are going to trade for you, we want to be able to have you at least for, like, this year and next year, at least. If they wanted a player that badly, and knowing that he's coveted around the league, like, I don't know how Memphis could have just not sat back and been like, let's just do 1 for 1. And the salaries matched up. That wasn't the issue. Like, it was within the, I think, 75 or 80% for the trade to go through. And obviously Crowder is, like, I think a good player. I think he can fit in most teams, and I think most teams would want a body like him just because he's serviceable in different areas. He can shoot the three. He can play some defense.
He can guard
Okay,
some people.
we need to talk about this. Jay Crowder is not good.
He's not good, but he's definitely someone that I'd rather have on my roster I'd rather have a Jay Crowder than a James Johnson.
No, but again, it doesn't matter that James Johnson and Dion Waiters are on the Memphis roster. They're not going to play anyway.
But you're paying them that money.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because they're not going to sign a player in free agency anyway. They're just getting these guys so they can get Winslow. So you keep bringing up the fact that these guys are going to factor into their game plan the next 2 years. They don't at all.
Well, definitely not James Johnson.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But again, they got a good center now for James Johnson. So who's to say they don't turn Dion Waiters into something next year, right?
Yeah. And again, before I knew that James Johnson was swapped for Dieng, I thought Memphis really picked up some salary that they didn't need to. But the fact that they were able to swap James Johnson for Dieng, that just adds more depth. Like, he's definitely a rotation piece. So for what they got, I thought it was an okay haul for Memphis. I thought Miami really got some good players. Obviously, they had to take on Solomon Hill, who's definitely not going to hit the floor for them. But they got Iguodala and Crowder and add that to a team that has a lot of youth, a lot of tenacity, and Jimmy Butler leading that group. I think they're really a threat in the East now.
Yeah, I'm going to say it. Solomon Hill is going to be in shape by the end of the year. And he will be ready to play next year. How about that? This Miami team does not mess around when it comes to players being in good shape. Like we saw earlier this year, James Johnson and Dion Waiters both showed up to training camp out of shape. And they just straight up said, hey man, you're not playing. Like you're not touching the floor. We can't have you out there in this shape. And we saw what James Johnson did. He got into shape.
Yeah, but I don't really think Solomon Hill has motivation to. Like, he has a contract. They have to honor it. They're going to pay him.
And you say that, but like he's still an NBA player. Like, he still wants his reps. He still wants to get his shots up.
Solomon Hill has actually been better than Jay Crowder this year.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Solomon Hill is shooting 41% from the field versus 38% from Jay Crowder, and 38% from three versus 32% from Jay Crowder. And Solomon Hill is a better defensive player than Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder is like one of the most overrated defensive players in the league. Jay Crowder is not a good NBA player. He has a rep because he played well for about 1 year. And he looks like he's like the prototype of a 3-and-D wing. He's 6'7". His shot looks nice sometimes. He's got cool hair. But, outside of that, what does he really give you?
It's the hair, man.
Yeah.
The dreads really make everyone look like they're the most badass defender when they're actually awful. Remember Kenneth Faried?
Yeah. And I mean, Jay Crowder gets into it a bunch of guys that people think he's tough, but he's a fugazi tough guy.
Wow, just throwing all the shots at this guy.
He sucks. I'm tired of the Jay Crowder talk.
I didn't know you felt this so strongly about him.
On the other side of things, like looking at it from Miami's perspective, I don't really like the deal so much. I mean, I like Iguodala and everything, but you look at Miami's potential closing lineup, and how much shooting do you really have out there when you have Jimmy Butler, Andre Iguodala, and Bam Adebayo, all three guys who really can't shoot three-pointers? And then you got Kendrick Nunn or Goran Dragic at the point guard position. Both guys don't really shoot a lot of catch-and-shoot threes. And then obviously you'll have maybe Olynyk, maybe Hero as a fifth guy. It's hard to say, but you need some shooting in that lineup. And now that they're not going to get Gallinari, Woj just confirmed that Oklahoma's not making any trades. I'm not really sure I like their closing lineup if it includes Iguodala so much.
I definitely think they could have added shooting in Gallinari. Obviously, they were interested in him. They couldn't make the numbers work. But I think the team is lacking a bit of shooting. But I think overall, they've been playing very hard. They have very good pieces. They have a great coach, a great system. They added some veteran presence in terms of Iguodala. And I really do see them being a deep threat in the playoffs and probably the second best team in the East now.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I don't know about second, but
they're still like contending with Philly
for second best.
In
Philly,
yeah, in the playoffs. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a discussion for another day, I guess.
Yeah.
Miami has a lot of options, so
we'll
they do have a lot of depth. I just don't know if Iguodala is going to end up being in their closing lineup just because of the lack of spacing. It's really hard when you have three guys who can't shoot on the floor.
Hey, Andre Iguodala was a Finals MVP like 5 years ago. Did you know that? Did you know he's a 3-time champion?
Yeah, I've only been told that like 15 times today.
Did you know that he hasn't touched the floor all year and he's just been sitting at home playing golf?
Okay, here's a question. How many minutes per game do you think he's going to play from now until the end of April?
Like 20.
Iguodala?
Tops.
20, yeah.
Tops. They're not going to play him that much.
I think he'll hit tops of like 25, but average around 20.
Yeah, I don't see it either. I just don't like Andre Iguodala that much anymore. He's old.
Because you're a Denver fan.
Well, that too. He's a snake and he's old. Yo, his crowning achievement was 5 years ago, and then all you hear now is that Andre Iguodala is still one of the best defenders, that he's won 3 times, that he's a Finals MVP. 5 years ago, man. Come on. He's 36. Just remember that.
We have breaking news on the podcast. The Lakers are expected to give free agent guard J.R. Smith a post-trade deadline audition. That's when you know you're desperate. Woo! And remain favorites to sign Darren Collison if Collison elects to make a comeback to the NBA instead of going door to door selling Bibles.
Well, good for J.R. Smith, man. I want him back.
Yeah, they needed a bit of shooting, and Darren Collison, and I wouldn't be surprised if they end up with Jamal Crawford as well.
Ugh.
Right,
I love Jamal Crawford, but ugh.
Next trade, we have D'Angelo Russell for your Canadian star, Josh, Andrew Wiggins. You two may go ahead. I'm just going to leave
All right, I want to break this down first because Josh and me went at it off the air. I knew that Golden State wanted Wiggins as part of this trade. I think they really look at Wiggins as a player who's kind of a Matt Barnes 2.0. Matt Barnes of 2015 or 2014 when they made their first.
Sorry. Wow. Harsh.
Yeah, but he's Matt Barnes then was younger. He played a key role in terms of.
Wait, don't you mean Harrison Barnes?
Harrison, not Matt Barnes. Oops, Harrison Barnes.
Okay, I was gonna say.
Yeah. See, I got too excited. Yeah, Harrison Barnes from 2015. But I think Andrew Wiggins in the right environment will never be a star. He will never be the number 2 guy, but I think he could be a very good number 3 guy. I think he fits in well in terms of what Golden State will be doing next year when they have Clay, when they have Steph, when they have Draymond, when they end up probably with like either Looney or a young center. And I think they'll be able to play a lot of the basketball that they were playing back in 2014 before KD arrived. And I think they turned around D'Angelo Russell. Well, they turned around Durant's leaving into a pretty good asset in terms of Wiggins coming back because they did the sign and trade with Brooklyn. They got Wiggins, and I believe they also got a first-round draft pick from Minnesota that's top 3 protected for 1 year, and then if it's not that year, it's unprotected the next. They did well, considering they were going to lose Durant for nothing. And I think Wiggins is going to be, again, not a top 2 guy. He's not going to put up 25 and 8 and 4. He's going to be a player that will be able to play defense, hit his shots, gain some confidence, have a less of a role there and less, I guess, pressure. And I think he'll be a Harrison Barnes 2.0.
See, you read out the trade backwards. The Warriors acquired a top 3 protected 2021 first round pick that becomes unprotected in 2022 if it's not conveyed in 2021. And Andrew Wiggins.
Exactly what I said.
Yeah.
No, you said Andrew Wiggins first. The whole reason behind this trade is the pick. Let's just be honest. I mean, Wiggins, they probably chose between Wiggins and getting guys like Gorgie Jang and other salary filler. And they were like, all right, we might as well go with the experiment and try to get Wiggins since we can't really get anybody else in free agency since we're hard capped. So let's try to get Wiggins as an experiment, put him in with Draymond Green. Hopefully Draymond can kick him in the ass and hopefully, Wiggins can become somewhat consistent. But ultimately this trade is just to get that top 3 protected pick. Let's just be honest.
Okay, but so I think you're missing the point here. I think the trade would have happened earlier if it was just D'Angelo Russell plus a bit of filler and the first round draft pick. I think Minnesota was reluctant to get rid of Wiggins.
Oh my God, Peter, come on, man. What do you say? Minnesota is not reluctant to get rid of him. They've been trying to get rid of him for 2 years.
Look at the reporting. Golden State was out of the talks unless Wiggins was part of it.
Yeah, Josh, I think you're wrong. I think.
Yeah, that was reported on several outlets. I think Wiggins was the piece they wanted. Obviously, they would have to make the salaries work, and I don't think Golden State wanted to end up with a bunch of filler salary. Even if Minnesota sweetened the pot and just said it's unprotected first-round draft pick, I still think they wanted a player that they could see in their future, and they didn't want 3 or 4 players that are just going to ride the bench and they're going to have to get rid of later. Wiggins will be a starter next year on Golden State. I think in the right role, he'll be a starter. He'll be probably the third guy there. He'll be in a situation where he's not going to be the first guy, the second guy, probably not even the third guy that they talk to. He's going to be like on the same par with Kevon Looney in terms of like media pressure, media attention. Obviously, he has the big salary, but
that's fine. But the point is, they weren't holding back the trade because of Andrew Wiggins. There was other reporting saying that it was held back because of the pick protections, and they were trying to figure out if it was going to be 1 pick, if it was going to be 2 picks, and what kind of protections were on the picks. There's no way Andrew Wiggins is holding up that deal. Like, the most likely scenario is he's going to get traded versus, trying to gather 3-4 players at once because that really wouldn't work out salary-wise or roster-wise because Golden State already had too many players in their team, which they now don't because they traded Robinson and Burks for nothing. But ultimately, the only thing that held up that trade was what kind of protections were on that pick and if there was going to be a second pick. There's no way it was because of Andrew Wiggins. They wanted to get rid of Wiggins for the last 2 years. They would have done anything to get rid of him last year especially. And this year he was good for 20 games again. And now he's back to sucking. So,
all right, well, we're going to remember this. We're going to remember this pod, but I'm telling you right now, I know based off of the reporting, based off of what the team probably wants to do, kind of the direction that Golden State's been going this year, they're really trying to set up their team obviously for next year. And I think in the right environment, he's a good player. And that's kind of what Golden State wanted, knowing that Kevin Durant was leaving. They picked up Russell. They were able to flip Russell for a first-round draft pick and Wiggins. That's a win for them.
Yeah, and again, that's not the point. And the point is, like, do you think that they would have traded Andrew Wiggins for a bunch of expiring contracts from Charlotte?
So if Wiggins wasn't part of the deal here, would Wiggins go to Charlotte for a bunch of expiring contracts?
Yeah, like Marvin Williams, Biyombo, etc. Do you think Minnesota would have done that?
Probably not. No.
Oh,
because they wanted D'Angelo.
Wait, you think, Josh, Russell. You think they would have done that?
Absolutely. They've been trying to get rid of him for 2 years. His contract is awful. Awful.
No. You're undervaluing him. Like his contract is awful. He hasn't lived up to it, but you're severely undervaluing him and what they want in return. It doesn't matter like that he's had a bad year. It's that he's still worth $33 million to them. Right? So you still have to exchange him for something that you can still sell to your fans as a comparable player.
They have no fans. Nobody shows up to their games. They're stuck, man. They're the worst team in the NBA with Andrew Wiggins.
Yeah. But now they have.
If you can get rid of his salary and start over, then why would you not try to do that?
And that's what they've done. Now they have 2 best friends together.
Okay.
How is it? Yeah. So how is this? You can't just say that they would trade Andrew Wiggins for nothing or for anything because they wouldn't, or else they would have done it already.
We don't know if that trade was available or not, obviously, but
I'm sure that Charlotte would have given up Bismack Biyombo and Cody Zeller for Andrew Wiggins. Okay, relax.
We don't know that for sure.
And
no, you do know that for sure, Josh. Stop.
And Wiggins is only 24. Like I'm not trying to say that his career is going to be on an upward trajectory and he's going to be a top 20 player or 30 player. No. But I think in the right environment, they got back something that's serviceable that they needed going forward with their team. And also, everyone questioned the fit with D'Angelo Russell when Clay and Steph were eventually going to come back. Like, clearly they just had Russell here because they knew other teams had interest in him. And you know what? They might flip Wiggins next year at the trade deadline for a piece that...
But right now,
let's do this thought experiment here. Name 5 contracts versus Andrew Wiggins' contract. Go.
I'm not going to defend his contract. I think his contract's awful.
Behind this, though, like, it's not about Wiggins the player. It's about his contract combined with, like, how bad he's been overall.
So that is the Wiggins the player, though. You can't just say that. It's just about his contract and not him. No, it's both, man. It's in conjunction with each other. The reason the contract...
Trade that when he has 4 years left on his deal.
Well, apparently they just did.
No, I'm talking about next year. Like, he's talking about trading him again next year for value. You're not going to get value for Andrew Wiggins.
No, they're not. I don't think that he's going to get...
This trade is ultimately about the pick. It's not about Wiggins. If he works out, great. If he doesn't, they'll be stuck with him or get another cheaper player that'll take his minutes, and he'll just float on the bench. But ultimately, they did this trade for the pick. Like, come on, let's be honest.
I think the pick had to be. I think the pick had to be part of it, but I think Wiggins. They wouldn't have done the trade without Wiggins in it because they wouldn't. They don't want any other salary but but Wiggins.
Yeah, but again,
that's what it came
the point
down
of it
to.
is they did this ultimately for the pick. Wiggins doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things for this.
Okay, well, we'll agree to disagree because I don't have 2 hours to discuss this, but I think
no,
the reporting comes out. No, I know, but the reporting comes out, you can apologize.
Andre Drummond is on his way to the Cleveland Cavaliers to form the weirdest front court ever of Andre Drummond, Tristan Thompson, and Kevin Love in exchange for, somehow, still in the league, Brandon Knight and John Henson. I have no idea what Detroit is doing other than releasing some contract, which I like, but otherwise this is weird as hell.
Yeah, this is something else. They got absolutely like no return on Drummond, like no pieces going forward. They really just kind of got rid of him because they wanted to move on from him and I guess start the rebuild hopefully. And again, Cleveland, I they didn't really give up much, which is kind of good for them because they're not going to be obliged to re-sign him, but I really do think they're going to make an effort to re-sign him. But then you're going to end up with that situation where you're going to have some combination of Kevin Love, Drummond, Sexton, probably Garland, and Tristan Thompson on your team, and 3 or 4 of those guys are going to start, which is not pretty for the NBA.
Now, I try to look at this from a different angle with Detroit. So does this speak more so towards their management just being terrible in this moment and trading Drummond for nothing? Or does it speak more towards Drummond not fitting into today's NBA and thus there being no value around the league for him?
I think there's zero value for someone who's worth or who's potentially going to make $28 million next year.
Yeah, I agree with that. So in that case, can you really fault Detroit's management for trading him for this? I mean, it sucks they didn't get a first-round pick for him, obviously, but at the same time, there probably wasn't one out there.
Yeah, but I think the problem was Detroit went into this year without a plan.
Well, they've gone into the last, 8 years without a plan?
Yeah, it's the fact is that Drummond's market, his value probably around the league right now is not much, but I think if you look back like 1 year ago at this time, they could have got back something, or even in the summer, they probably could have got a bigger haul. This year, they were probably trying very hard to get that 8th seed, probably not working out well for them, and I think they've decided to move in another direction. It's just a bit too late, and I think that's where the management's plan comes into question, because they got back pieces that are literally just expiring contracts. So you basically waived the player.
I mean, they are saving like $5 or $6 million on this.
Oh no, absolutely. Like they're like, the idea is, yes, they dumped him, save some money, probably go under the tax, but they didn't really improve their team in any way possible.
I don't think they were planning. It doesn't look like they're trying to. The thing with Drummond's contract is that he has a player option for next year, at which you're going to be paying him almost $29 million. So for Cleveland, at least they get to essentially have a lease on the guy for the next 3 months, right? See how he plays, and then yeah. But for Detroit, like, they've already had him. They already know how he is. He obviously doesn't fit anywhere. So what's the point of keeping him around? I mean, I wish that Detroit could have gotten a better haul out of it rather than Brandon Knight and John Henson, but you're right. You can only get what's being offered to you, right? And if there's no market for the guy, then there's no market.
Yeah, this is my issue with Toronto before when they had DeRozan. I thought that they were going to wait too long to trade him, then they ended up trading for Kawhi. And I didn't really think Toronto was ever going to trade DeRozan. And, in this case, Detroit waited 1 year too late at least. And the thing was with Drummond, like, he's going to put up stats on Cleveland, so it's going to be difficult for them not to re-sign him when he's putting up like 20-20s every game, because there's really nobody else in that team. And then you're going to sign him for another 4 to 5 years, and you're going to be stuck with a team that's not very good.
You're just going to take Detroit and move them like 500 kilometers or whatever, 300 miles east. That's basically what you're going to end up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But at least after this summer, they won't have, or they as in Cleveland won't have Tristan Thompson on the books anymore.
Yeah,
so
but that's
something.
Yeah, it's Yeah. I again, those teams are in a tough position because they can't really attract the number one free agents, and their managements aren't really well known or well established. So I think they're going to be interesting to see what they do with Drummond, but I think this is a trade in the bigger scheme of things that we're probably going to forget about going forward. One trade that I think is very interesting that happened late last night was Golden State getting rid of Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson III for pretty much pennies on the dollar, and Philly picked them up, and I think that actually helps them. I know, Josh, you're probably going to disagree with me here, but I think that really does help them in areas that they needed a bit of help and just gives them extra bodies, a bit more depth.
No, I don't really disagree with you. I mean, Philadelphia needed more scoring off their bench and more shooting overall, and Robinson's shooting, I think, 40% from three, and he's improved a lot this year overall. And Burks is what he is. He's a scoring guard that at times can give you big scoring nights, and other times he's going to go for, 1 for 9. But in the game where he shoots well, he can win you a playoff game, and that's what you want from guys coming off the bench in limited roles. And they traded James Ennis in order to make room for these two guys, in order for them to, play a bit more minutes. And they obviously have Korkmaz still off the bench, who's shooting, I think, 39% from three. So they have some guys off the bench now that can, space the floor a little bit for them. But we're going to see if that starting lineup ends up working once Richardson gets back. Because overall, a lot of people are panicking about Philadelphia, but I've maintained this position the entire season. I still think they're going to the finals. I still think that starting lineup is more than good enough to win the East. And I think it will work ultimately once they, figure out the rotation once Richardson gets back. Because one of the main reasons why they're losing all these games is because they don't have Richardson in the lineup. And they don't have as much scoring depth or defense on the perimeter. He was really good when he played for them. And when you combine him with Thibault and Simmons, instead of just having Simmons and Thibault by themselves, you just have, chaos out there on the perimeter where they can just shut down pretty much anybody. So they've improved in the, in the trade deadline, and Golden State got 3 second-round picks back. So ultimately, I think it's a win-win for both teams.
Yeah, I thought they could have got a bit better return for at least both of those players combined. But you know what? They picked up picks, and I think Burks and Robinson aren't in their long-term plans. So they got something from players that were just going to expire anyways this year.
Yeah, and they're cheap contracts, so who cares, right?
Yeah, they're like $2 million each.
Yeah. Overall, Philly gets a little bit more perimeter depth that they obviously need, and I don't know, a couple of veterans too, right? Guys who have been around the league, know what they're doing. Won't try to do too much on the floor, which is obviously key. Not bad.
I think Robinson too can be an emerging 3-and-D guy. He's still pretty young, and again, he's shooting really well this year. And defensively, he's been good throughout his entire career thus far. He's not very well known, obviously, but he's going to be in the limelight now, so he's going to have to perform under the big lights.
How old do you think Glenn Robinson is?
27.
26 and 29 days.
Damn.
Yeah, so it's not bad. You get a guy who's shooting 48% from the field, 40% from three, 5 rebounds a game. He's been good this year.
Yeah, on very limited run, though, right?
Yeah, he's
48%.
playing 32 minutes a game.
Really?
Yeah. It doesn't seem that way because nobody watches Golden State. I just realized this a couple days ago, too. But he has played pretty well overall. If you look at the stats and just overall performance, he's been pretty consistent. But he's going in a whole new role now. He's not going to play that many minutes, obviously, and he's not going to start anymore. So who knows what will happen in a more limited role.
Better hit his shots.
As you know, when you become a role player, sometimes when you play, 5 to 10 minutes a game versus, 15 to 20, especially when you can't play more than 5 minutes in a row, it just totally affects your rhythm, and some guys can't adjust to that. They have to play extended minutes in order to be good, and he might be one of those guys.
Yeah, that's why Jamal Crawford was always so loved. He just comes off the bench, he's already in rhythm.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, the last trade we're going to talk about. You have Dwayne Dedmon finally getting his request, I guess, addressed. Going back to Atlanta for another couple of years in exchange for Jabari Parker, former second overall pick, and Alex Len. Does this really have any significance in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I think what Atlanta did overall is they got rid of Parker, Len, and basically picked up Capela and Dedmon, and I think they just improved their depth at the center position. Obviously, Dedmon has last year In Atlanta, he was fairly productive, and he's going to be playing behind Capela. So I think it's a good pickup. And I think for Sacramento, they realized Dedmon experiment didn't work out. They shed his contract and picked up Len's expiring, and Jabari Parker, who's now kind of been an NBA journeyman, who might be able to give them like 10 to 15 minutes a game. I think this was more of a salary dump just to sign Bogdanovic in the offseason, but I think the real question comes from what are they going to do, because I think Bogdan's going to want to start. He's going to want to get paid like a starter. They've already paid Buddy Yield as a starter. What happens there?
I think Bogdan's going to tell him he wants out. And because he's restricted, the Kings can match any offer. But I think ultimately he's going to tell them, like, I don't want to be here, so don't match this offer. I think he's gone because, as you said, he wants to be a starter. He's a starting caliber player as well. So I think ultimately he's going to be gone in the offseason, and all the moves that the Kings made in the offseason have already, come back to bite them. They traded, obviously, Dedmon and Ariza after signing them in the offseason, and Corey Joseph is on a disgusting deal as well. And obviously Harrison Barnes, we've discussed before. So the Kings are just stuck like they always are. They're not quite the Detroit of the West, but at least they actually have some talent on that team. But I don't know, they just keep going in circles. And for Atlanta, getting Dedmon, I sort of like it. I mean, he played well for them last year. I think the biggest thing this year was he wasn't hitting a 3-point shot with Sacramento. And maybe in going back to a system that he's comfortable with and getting wide open shots off of Trae Young, maybe he'll be a decent 15 to 20 minute per game guy and not have as much pressure on him to be a starting caliber player anymore.
Hey, did you know that Harrison Barnes is an NBA champion?
Yeah, he's a NBA champion. So is Adam Morrison.
Exactly. Equally as important. So we're thinking Dedmon comes off behind Capela, I'm assuming?
Yeah, for sure. And I think some games he's not going to play because they're going to have Collins sort of be the backup 5 in small ball lineups. So Dedmon's sort of there as like a safeguard in case one of those guys gets injured, or if they're playing a bigger team that has a big center that plays a lot of minutes. And speaking about centers, David Aldridge just reported that there's going to be no buyout for Tristan Thompson in Cleveland. So he's going to be playing behind Andre Drummond the rest of the year, which is going to probably kill his value.
Or playing with
Andre Drummond.
Ugh. I still have Kevin Love, though, right? So
yeah, small forward Kevin Love.
Small forward Tristan Thompson.
Either. Why not?
Play him at point guard. He'd be better than Colin Sexton anyway.
Yo, Kevin Love can definitely pass better than Colin Sexton.
I was talking about Tristan.
He can probably handle it better than Sexton.
I mean, Sexton averages like 2 assists per game. It's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah, for a lead point guard, it's wild.
Yeah. I like Garland, though. I think he's going to be good. But moving on.
Yeah. That's all we got, man. That's it. We ran through all the important trades. Unless you want to talk about Scala BCR.
Yeah, let's skip that. I do want to mention one thing just of interest. I'm going to name Minnesota's starting 10 players, and we'll just have a
Wait, what?
Just
like,
Minnesota's 10 players, like their 10 top roster players who will probably play. So they have D'Lo, Cat, Culver, Okogie, Hernan Gomez, Beasley, Smelvin, James Johnson.
Smelvin?
Spellman.
Spellman, okay. I was like, who the hell is that?
James Johnson, Evan Turner, Jake Lehman, Crab, and then a bunch of players, Vanderbilt and Evans, who I'm not too familiar with.
And you wonder why Towns is so depressed.
Yeah, like if you had the starting 5, you would obviously start D'Lo, Cat, Culver, Okogie, and Spellman? Or Beasley?
Ugh. I think Beasley's going to start now for sure.
He should. Beasley's probably the best shooter on that team.
Yeah, off the bench, you pretty much have the old Portland Trailblazers with Evan Turner and Alan Crabb. Sprinkle in a bit of Hernan Gomez and Jake Lehman.
Minnesota, where expiring contracts go to die.
And then James Johnson.
You know what they should do? They should pick up Isaiah Thomas now that he's been waived by the Clippers.
Yeah.
Give him a shot.
For what? Why? Like, why? What's the point?
Yeah, it could create some excitement if he becomes 50% of what he was in Boston. I don't know.
What are you talking about?
Comeback season. Hashtag comeback season.
They're better off getting Jeremy Lin back, man.
Sure. Whatever gets the fans in the seats.
No, so nothing. They're better off doing nothing in Minnesota, is what you're saying.
They should just give Culver like 42 minutes a game now.
Yeah, he's not gonna hit the bench anytime. Like bathroom break and that's it. Yeah, and also just one more thing. Memphis also had a lot of changes in their lineup, but I think they're doing it the right way, by just adding a lot of young players who want to compete, who probably will end up good depth. They have Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Brandon Clark, JV, Anderson, Dylan Brooks, Winslow, Jordan Bell, Grayson Allen, Tyus Jones, Melton. So they're kind of going about it the right way. I think they're on an upward trajectory.
And who thought DeAnthony Melton would be the good player that they got out of that deal with Josh Jackson? That was weird. I did not expect that at all. He's actually been pretty good this year, and Josh Jackson's played 3 games, I think, for the Grizzlies so far.
Yo, Josh Jackson might have won them that game yesterday by smoking KP right in the face and breaking his nose.
Yeah. That was great.
All right. I think that's all the time we've got today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this trade special. There's obviously a lot to digest, but we'll see how things go in the next couple of weeks. I want to thank everyone for listening. Please remember to rate and subscribe. You can hit us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Anchor, Google Play, all the major podcast platforms. Find us on Instagram and Twitter at Stretch4Pod. And until next time, peace.